we captured this in the middle of the night. So I've got the Milky Way above me, and then I've got a galaxy just right below me. And I've never felt so at one with an environment of me just paddling my hardest, trying to keep up with this shark. It's swimming along real gentle, like not giving a crap about me. It looked like glittering diamonds were just rolling off its back and leaving kind of a trail. And it's just, to me, it's magic. And that's part of why I do what I do, is because I want to preserve that magic. So I'm not telling my kids about it through a storybook. I can just take them to see it and experience it on their own.
Welcome to the Into the Wilderness podcast. I'm your host, Byron Pace. It is the 31st of March, 2022. For those of you who are new to the show, this show is out every 2 weeks. It alternates between the episode that you're going to be listening to now, which is the Living with Nature series, and a longer form, more conversational podcast where I speak to a whole array of guests from around the planet, from biologists to explorers, hunters, fishers, and everything you can possibly think of in between. Along with hosting this podcast, I am the Conservation Director for Modern Huntsman, which is a biannual publication dedicated to sustainable use of wild resources and conservation. You can get the latest volume, Volume 8 now, on modernhuntsman.com, which is focused on conservation issues on the continent of Africa. I am also a filmmaker, which actually is what takes up most of my year, and you can see that work on byronpace.com or follow me on the various socials at byronjpace, where you can see the photography and film work posted on a kind of semi-regular basis when I'm around and when I have time and when I remember. I'm pretty bad at posting on social. But anyway, to this episode, you're going to be hearing from, and oh my goodness, I enjoyed this show listening back to it to edit it, so I hope that you're going to love it. This show is with Melissa Cristina Marquez. She is a marine biologist specializing in shark science. She has a column in Forbes, is a TV presenter for NatGeo, and you may have seen her in GQ, giving TedX talks on Discovery Channel, or maybe on Good Morning America. So she does quite a lot of stuff. She works incredibly hard. She is an amazing science communicator, and it is a privilege to have her on the show. Just before we dive into the questions, a shout out to the top tier Patreon supporters, which this month include Richard McNeil, Ronnie Speakman, avodicontracting.co.uk, James Marchington, the guys at South Esher Stalking, Thomas Cameron, Mark Zabrowski, and Colin Knight. If you would like to support the podcast, and it really, really helps, head over to patreon.com/Byron Pace. With all of that said, please welcome Melissa Cristina Marquez to the show. Melissa, welcome to the Into the Wilderness podcast. It is fantastic to have you on today. We are currently sat at the end of the One with Nature conference here in Hungary. So we're not recording this well, actually, I was going to say in the States, but actually, you kind of you live in a different parts of the world. You actually live in Australia, but you're going back to the States now, or in Scotland. We're in the host country of the One with Nature conference, and I've had the privilege of getting to know you the last couple of days, and you've been part of some really fascinating conversations, and I thought you were going to be an ideal person for this Living with Nature series that we're doing on the show. So by way of background, maybe just before we dive into our 5 questions that I'm going to ask you, just give me the kind of 2-minute rundown of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Melissa Cristina Marquez. I am a shark scientist PhD candidate who looks at shark habitat use, so figuring out why they are where they are, but also our relationship with sharks, so how that's evolved over the years and what kind of factors really go into our perception of sharks and how that in turn sways conservation initiatives either being successful or not successful. So my background is completely marine, so being with the One with Nature Expo here in Hungary, not being marine really whatsoever, is really cool as a
fish
marine
out of
person.
water, maybe.
Literally, I see what you did there.
That was so bad. I'm gonna have to cut that out.
No, it stays. It stays because that's exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
I was just like, sometimes I was kind of like, what am I doing here? But listening to all of these conversations, it's so interesting how parallel the marine and terrestrial management issues are. And it just kind of really goes back to showing you we are one planet. So whatever happens in one ecosystem is going to affect the other and vice versa.
Yeah, they are connected because we are nature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I mean, being a shark biologist sounds incredibly boring, so I don't think this is going to be a great interview. So question 1 for you. How do you connect connect to nature on a regular basis? I think whatever you're going to say is going to be cool. I have that feeling.
I mean, for me, I'm really lucky that this past year, especially, I've been living aboard a boat. And so if I ever felt like disconnected from nature, all I had to do was just open up a porthole and stick my head out, and there's the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow.
And for me, it really is the ocean. I come from the Caribbean. I'm from Puerto Rico, and my first memories are of the ocean. And so that's kind of my happy place. And in Australia, I'm really lucky that I have the ocean right there, but I also have the outback. I'm able to go to hikes every week. And outside of my window, we've got this really beautiful eucalyptus tree that is home to a bunch of native Australian animals. So it's just as easy as me sticking my head out, breathing in some fresh air, and hoping that the koala doesn't fall into my bedroom.
I mean, how did you connect with nature when you were younger? What was your connection there?
We always went to the beach. Like that. I mean, that's been my happy place for forever. And so my first memories are of me harassing hermit crabs and probably killing way too many. And, swimming with fishes, going out into the rainforest and listening to those sounds and running up and down the stairs as we're going from one waterfall to the other. And
so the door was opened by your parents?
Always, yeah.
To nature?
Yeah.
That's how you found it?
It wasn't even so much my parents. It was more the environment that I was in.
Okay, because you kind of existed in it.
Yeah, because my mom's a scientist, but she's more like the chemistry side, and my dad does finances and math, and his happy place is a computer, which is fine.
My dad did finance too, but it wasn't his happy place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a trend.
Yeah, I think it is.
But yeah, it was them kind of being like, go, and I think this is kind of like our generation might be one of the last ones where our parents were like, right, go forth, get your knees skinned and your toes dirty, and then come back. And that
Eat
was
food
my
with
case.
dirt on your hands because it's
Exactly.
good for you.
Mud cakes, delicious.
Yeah. Oh, amazing! So it's been with you your whole life, really.
Exactly.
A desire. And so, what was it specifically, other than being beside marine environments, that took you to sharks?
Funnily enough,
Other than they're really cool.
yeah, they are amazing, but I'm biased in saying that, I guess. So when we moved from Mexico to the States, it was during the summertime, and my parents kind of plopped me in front of the TV, and they were like, right, there's more channels here than there ever was in Mexico. Don't break anything, just stay as we unpack the house. And I flipped the channel to Discovery Channel and watched Shark Week.
Okay.
And it was a great white shark like breaching out of the water, and it's all graceful gloriness, and that to me kind of cinched it. I was like, I don't know what that is, but I want to study it. Like that's it.
So that speaks incredibly powerfully to how influential media can be, but particularly film or documentaries.
Oh, 100%. And the thing that really struck out to me, it was actually one of the like Air Jaws series that they have. It wasn't scary music in the background. It was like just that awe-inspiring kind of music when you sit back and you watch an animal in its element doing what it's supposed to do.
Because sharks are often painted as the enemy.
Exactly. And so for me, that kind of just captured my attention. And I remember telling my parents, like, I'm going to be a shark scientist. I want to study them. And they were like, okay, next week you're going to say you want to be a fireman or something like that. And I never got out of the phase.
And you went from that to actually being involved in Shark Week.
Yeah.
So dreams do come true.
Exactly.
I mean, that's pretty freaking cool. That you went from a kid watching that, and then you're like, yeah, I'm gonna be in it. That's amazing. Well done. That's incredible.
It's really cool for me, at least, because it's funny, being that kid and watching all of these, I never saw a woman shark scientist. So now I get to be in that position where I get to inspire other little kids, like little Mellies, essentially, being like, oh, I want to be a shark scientist, but I don't know it. And then they see me and they're like, oh,
I can do it.
Hold on. Yeah.
She looks like me.
Exactly. So I'm really, really proud of that.
That's so cool. It's amazing because all the scientists or science communicators I know in the marine environment who that's their thing. I'm just racking my brains. I think they're all women, actually, that I know. Which is so cool.
You know what?
Yeah, like our mutual connection.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Shout out to Sarah.
Yeah.
There are some powerhouse science communicating women out there. And I think it's because, to toot our own horns, we're really good at storytelling and bringing in that emotion and capturing people and bringing them along to whatever story we kind of want to weave. And that's especially important in nature. It's not just storytelling of the mouth through words, but it's through film, it's through media. So I think we're quite good at that. And all it takes is going on social media, looking at any of those accounts, and you're going to be blown away.
So question 2. We spend a lot of time talking about negative things in the conservation world. Do you have a good example of a company or a person or organization who's really helping to fix that? We've been talking about disconnect. I was saying the other day, I like the phrase decoupling of people and nature, and it's helping to bring that back together, to recouple the urban masses, which is largely what we're speaking about in terms of disconnect with nature again. Is there any sort of standout examples where that's working?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of them in Australia where they are starting to bring the scientists, the stakeholders, the policymakers, but also the public, and not just the generalized public, but specifically the Aboriginals, so the First Nations, into this kind of conversation about conservation, which I think is really special because the relationship between Australia and its First Nations is very complex. I mean, we go on about hours for it. And so I think having them be a part of this conversation, of getting them involved with the skills and the tools to be able to not only showcase their traditional knowledge, but also help quote unquote modern scientists do research and successfully implement some conservation initiatives there, I think is really special and something that other communities around the world can kind of look through. I know that it's been done with quite a few different animals, and also flora as well, such as planting of trees. From the shark side, I know there's quite a few different communities there in regards to like sawfish and the local traditional communities there, and having that open dialogue, or any of the other kind of endemic sharks that you only find in Australia. So I think it's a step in the right direction and something that other countries can look to and see it as an example to follow.
Yeah, I increasingly see an acknowledgement that integrating traditional ecological knowledge with the modern science is accepted as essential.
Yeah.
And of course, historically, it was the case that a lot of that traditional knowledge was kind of hijacked by scientists who would parachute into places, use local communities for whatever end it was that they were trying to, and then pull out of there and go and do whatever science it was they were doing without there ever being any kind of reciprocal feedback.
Exactly.
But I think largely that's been acknowledged now, maybe not in all circles, but I see it being talked about much more, which is really positive.
Yeah, and it is something that I know quite a lot of people in the science communication groups or circles are talking about parachute science and how it's not okay in this day and age to go into an area, use that traditional knowledge or the local people's knowledge, exploit that kind of work, and then leave with the science and never bring back what they found, and how that can benefit or what can be done in that community to better coexist with that nature, both the wild spaces but also the wild animals in there as well. And so I'm glad that people are having those conversations. It kind of feels like, well, finally.
Yeah, of course. Okay, if I move on to the next question, and I imagine that it's going to be something to do with sharks. I might be wrong. Is there a conservation story happening right now that you are particularly passionate about and you want to tell the world about?
The thing that I'm actually really passionate about right now, outside of sharks, of course, is blue carbon.
Okay.
Funnily enough. So for people who don't know what the term blue carbon is essentially there's coastal ecosystems such as mangroves and seagrass beds that will intake carbon and store it essentially, both in like the actual roots and the plant matter itself, but also the soil. And it's communities now having a conversation about how they can use that to protect specific ecosystems, being like, okay,
by having tradable value.
Yeah, by having tradable value. And it's that whole, one kind of conversation that we've been having at this expo is, do nature services / resources have a price?
Yeah.
And sometimes for some people, that's what it takes, those dollar signs, for them to be like, oh, okay, now I see why this ecosystem is worth having or worth protecting.
What is the cost of not having it? Is how I quite often frame it, because it's like, whoa, hold on a second. You mean if the forest isn't there, my water bill's going to go up 10 times because it's not doing the natural flow of what ecosystem services do by cleaning my water? It's that kind of thing, right?
Exactly. And so I think it's kind of a up and coming conservation success, because I think it's getting people who normally don't think about protecting ecosystems and habitats to start thinking and start having that conversation. To me, it's still quite a new topic, and I think it's still an evolving theory. So I'm really interested in seeing how it grows in the next couple of years. And I'm actually hopefully going to be a part of that conversation in the Caribbean with science communication efforts of taking the most important kind of takeaway messages and translating them into Spanish, so at least that community also has that ability to understand, okay, what is happening? How does it impact me? How can I get involved?
Well, I will look out for that. So, second last question. Is there a person who particularly inspires you in the sort of the greater outdoor space? I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to be connected to conservation if it happens not to be, but in terms of connecting with nature, was there somebody growing up, or is there someone now that you're like, everyone else needs to know about this person because they're amazing and they're inspiring?
I mean, I could be really like just cliche and be like David Attenborough, because I mean, that voice is iconic and he kind of is like in the mind set or in the back of my mind whenever
everybody knows Big D though.
Yeah, exactly. The funny thing is, like, what got me really into habitat use of animals was a cartoon character.
Okay.
So in the United States, there was a show that's called The Wild Thornberries. And it was about this family that went gallivanting around the world, and they were filmmakers, essentially. And the daughter saves this warthog from a trap, and it turns out to be a shaman who gives her a gift, which is the ability to talk to animals.
I want that gift.
I know. Every time someone asks, like, what's your superpower, or what superpower you want, I'm like, talk to animals. I want to ask so many questions.
I want to be Dr. Dolittle.
Yes. Yes. And so the show was really good at not only showcasing the environment that she was in, but also the animals and the intricacies. Like, she ended up talking to lions and to jackals and like other animals that are quote unquote villains, except they never talked about sharks, which I have a bone to pick about that. But still, I know.
Do a new series.
I know. I'm like, hello, we need to redo this. But showed the quote unquote villains in a different way, in a different light as well. And that to me really got me into figuring out the different perspective of animals as well. Being like, wait a minute, are they actually the quote unquote bad guys, or do we just not know enough about them that we're painting them this way because they go against the grain of what we think they should be acting like? So that was probably one of the biggest influences. Was a cartoon character.
It just shows you where influences can come from, though.
Yeah,
and
again,
how
media.
important it is to think maybe out the box, to use a phrase that's used all the time, about how we communicate.
Yeah, definitely.
Kids' cartoons.
Kids' cartoons.
And actually, talking about kids, I mean, you have a kids' book.
I do. I have two.
Yeah. We have two people here who have kids' books. There's Sarah Roberts as well.
Yeah.
She has a kids' book out.
Yeah,
or
I have
3, I think, now.
That's true. She's got quite a few. Yeah. I've got a trio of books. 2 are already out. The third is going to be coming out April 2022. But they are about those
So was the cartoon inspiration for that?
Sort of, actually.
Kind of,
of was. And I mean, my own like run-in and passion with misunderstood animals is also quite a big inspiration for it. But yeah, I believe that we can communicate really important conservation messages to different audiences through different means. And one of them is kids. A lot of times people try to like quote unquote dumb things down for kids. They're smart. Kids are super smart. So why would you not give them a concept such as, like, say, overfishing or illegal fishing or deforestation? Give it to them in a way that they can understand and educate them really early on. So as they go throughout their world, they have that nugget in their back of their brain, and then they can start learning more and more and more about them. Because one thing that I've learned about with kids is they're sponges. As soon as
Oh, yeah.
something captures their curiosity, they're going to go down a rabbit hole. And it's so much easier to do it now with the age of the internet, where you can just Google illegal fishing or deforestation, and you just learn more and more and more and more. So my books, I kind of hope, are a gateway into the curiosity of what is out there in nature, and who knows, maybe inspire some people to become wildlife conservationists.
I love it. Well, if we get a chance to meet again in person, I need to get a signed copy of one of your kids'
Yes,
books.
definitely.
That needs to be on the list. Okay, last question. Is there, of all the cool stuff that you've done around the world now, is there one memory of the most incredible interaction with nature that
Yeah.
you have? Something that sort of defined or was a pivotal point in who you are?
Yeah, so I think there's a bunch of little ones on the way for me becoming who I am, but I think probably the two most that keep me going when wildlife news and uh, troubles kind of get you down. One of them is back in 2019, filming with a NatGeo show, which uh, I just got confirmation is going to air sometime this year, which I'm very excited
Oh,
about.
amazing.
We got to go back to my home, so Puerto Rico, and I got to kayak in a clear glass kayak in one of the bioluminescent bays.
No, I am
Yes.
so desperate to go there.
It's amazing. Mosquito Bay, or in Vieques, is just absolutely incredible. But the really cool thing was there was so much bioluminescence, and this was after Hurricane Maria in 2017. There was so much bioluminescence, you could see every single animal, including a shark.
Wow.
And we captured this in the middle of the night. So I've got the Milky Way above me, and then I've got a galaxy just right below me. And I've never felt so at one with an environment of me just paddling my hardest, trying to keep up with this shark. It's swimming along real gentle, like not giving a crap about me. It looked like glittering diamonds were just rolling off its back and leaving kind of a trail. And it's just, to me, it's magic. And that's part of why I do what I do, is because I want to preserve that magic. So I'm not telling my kids about it through a storybook. I can just take them to see it and experience it on their own. And I think if we keep protecting little pockets of magic through the wilderness that we have in our society, through many different conservation management tools, I think we're going to leave the planet a lot better than what we've kind of been seeing how it is right now. So that every time that I'm down, I think of that little piece of magic, and I'm like, right, that's what I'm working for.
And what a beautiful way to end the last question. And the takeaway from that is find a beautiful piece of magic and protect it.
Pretty much.
Melissa, thank you so much for taking the time after a really hectic couple of days where we've basically been busy and non-stop since we all arrived to podcast on the last couple of hours that we're here together. So I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for taking part in the symposium and helping me up on stage today when we were presenting to all of the members.
I always got time for you, Byron. Thank you so much for having me.